Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio In. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Moondrop Chu 2, which is, of course, Moondrop's second iteration of the very popular original Chu. And at the time, even I felt the original Chu was the ultra budget king because it followed Moondrop's VDSF target, and its tuning was just so much better. It was more of a neutral tuning than any other budget set that I had come across up to that point. And it is still a good IM in my opinion. However, not much longer after the release of the Chu, the Tangzhou Wan came onto the scene, and it immediately won me over, and it became my new ultra budget top pick IM. But even when the Chu was my favorite, I did have a couple of minor tuning issues. It was a little bit overly mid forward, and it also had a little bit of a lean bass presentation. So now we have the Moondrop Chu 2, and its tuning does deviate quite a bit from the original Chu, and there are certain aspects of the new approach they took with the Chu 2 that I like, and then others that I don't like as much. So what we'll do is we'll go over what's included in the box, we'll talk about the specifications and design, then we'll dive into the sound. As for what's included in the box, we have the IMs and cable, of course. It also comes with a simple carrying pouch and a few sets of ear tips. Unfortunately, they did not include the spring tips this time around. However, they do include a detachable 2-pin cable, which is awesome because that was one of the other small issues that I had with the original Chu. And the cable quality is actually pretty decent considering it's only $19. It makes that $19 cost worth it just by itself, in my opinion. As far as the driver configuration, it has a single 10mm dynamic driver. It's housed in an all alloy shell. The all metal build does feel robust and durable, but it's still light and it sits quite comfortably in my ears. And the nozzle cap can be removed, allowing you to replace the filter when needed. Overall, the build, design, and the fit of the Chu 2 are excellent. And again, the cable quality is really good, especially considering the price. And it's a 2-pin cable, so I'm sure that'll be greatly appreciated by most consumers. Okay, let's move on to the sound. Okay, let's talk about the sound of the Moondrop Chu 2. So as I'd mentioned in my opening, one of the appeals of the original Chu and what made it stand out from the crowd was that it had a more neutral tuning, which again followed Moondrop's VDSF target. And while I did have some minor issues with its overly forward mid-range and the thin bass presentation, compared to other ultra budget IMs, it was still generally quite pleasant and relatively natural sounding. So now we have the Chu 2, and while I didn't expect it to be tuned exactly like the original, I certainly did not expect them to lean so much closer towards a V-shaped signature either. That's not to say I don't like it, because I do. And as this type of tuning approach goes, I do think this is pretty well done. Again, it's just not what I expected. So the overall signature is what I would consider to be bordering on a mild V-shape. It moves a little further away from the neutral sound of the original Chu, and it takes on a much more engaging and fun presentation. So there is a fairly significant emphasis on bass and less emphasis on the mids. So the mids are a little bit recessed between about 300 hertz up to 1K, but then as you move into the upper mids, there is some forwardness around 3K at the ear gain region. And it's actually a little more forward than the original Chu, but I do think it's needed because it helps to balance out the extra mid-bass presence. As for its bass presentation, I would not say it's a bass head set, but it's definitely more bass than I need. And while I do feel like the Chu 2 approaches and even might be considered to have a mild V-shaped signature, it's still a little more on the polite side as far as its overall bass presentation. So the bass is not overly forward and it doesn't dominate the presentation. It has really good extension, so there is sufficient amount of sub-bass rumble. It's not the most dynamic bass, but we are talking about a $20 IM. It's good considering the price. There's also a little more mid-bass and low mid energy, which does add some warmth, and unfortunately there's also some bass bleed in the lower mids. Again, that's a pretty common issue at this price point. That being said, I do think that the overall bass presentation is still pretty solid overall. And then as you move into the mids, they are recessed, and subsequently instruments and some male vocals can sound a little thin, but that energy kicks up quite a bit the further up the graph you go. And again, that energy peaks out right at about 3K in the ear gain region, which does push female vocals and some instruments that land there a little more forward. And while on paper it looks like there might be a little too much energy there, again, I think it's actually needed because, again, that does help balance out the bass. As for instrument timbre, it's okay. It could use some improvement, but it's natural enough for me as to not become overly distracting, and I didn't necessarily feel like it took away from the overall listening experience. And then as you move into the treble, you do lose a little bit of energy, but it's definitely not what I would consider relaxed. There's still enough energy to keep up with the upper mids and to help balance out the bass levels. And it also has really good treble extension, so you get nice amounts of air past 10K, and again, that helps a little bit with micro details as well. Now, speaking of detail, the technicalities of the Chu 2 are pretty good, but honestly, they're still not much better than most ultra budget IEMs. I would say they are above average. Again, when you're comparing this to IEMs at the $20 price range, I would say it's a little bit better. The soundstage is wide enough for an IEM. Instrument layering is also pretty good, but again, we are talking $20. So it's a good set as far as technicalities, but you have to set your expectations accordingly. So we know the Chu 2 deviates quite a bit from the original Chu, and it takes a more fun and engaging approach. But where does the Chu 2 stand in terms of the rest of the competition? Well, I do think it edges out the Ola bass slightly. The Chu 2's better bass extension and the upper mids and treble sound just as natural as the Ola bass, but it also adds a little bit more treble detail. Then we have the Wan'er, which up to this point, it has been my ultra budget top pick. And the attribute that appeals to me about the Wan'er is how natural it sounds for it being an ultra budget IM. But the Chu 2 and the Wan'er take two totally different approaches. We know that with the tuning. The Chu 2 has a more fun and exciting presentation, a little more energy in the bass and the treble, while the Wan'er is more relaxed and natural sounding, which is actually the tuning approach that I kind of have a proclivity to reach for. So for me personally, the Wan'er is still the IM I would be more likely to grab whenever I just want to sit and chill and just listen to music. That being said, the Chu 2 would be the other ultra budget IEM. This would be the second one that I would reach for whenever I'm wanting to listen to something that's a little more exciting and engaging. So while the Wan'er is still my top pick for a more neutral sound, the Chu 2 is now my favorite V-shaped tuned ultra budget IM. And while it wasn't the tuning approach I expected Moondrop to take, I'm kind of glad they did, because again, as mild V-shaped tunings go, or close to V-shaped tunings go, this is a very well done IM. It still gives you nice amounts of bass and treble energy to keep things exciting, but it also maintains a level of maturity and control. So this was pretty unexpected, but really cool, and the Chu 2 does definitely get my recommendation. So that concludes my review of the Moondrop Chu 2. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.